Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Pink and Channels. And we're back here because the summer's in full swing, which means transfers are in full swing. And Norwich City have completed the signing of Harry Darling on a free transfer after his contract expired or is due to expire at Swansea City. And I'm delighted to be joined by Tom Coleman from Wales Online. Tom, thank you so much for joining me. Talk to us a little bit about Harry Darling and the player that Norwich City have signed.
I think it's probably no exaggeration to say that Harry has probably been one of the more impressive centre backs in the division at the moment. I think earlier last season, in the early stages of last season, I think in the first 15 games, I think it was, Swansea only conceded 9 goals, and Harry's a massive part of that. Him and Ben Cabango formed a really impressive partnership. Perhaps lost their way a little bit in the sort of middle point of the season, but I don't think that was necessarily their fault. I think there were a lot of issues at Swansea at the time, and obviously with Luke Williams eventually leaving the club, that clearly caused a bit of turbulence. But after steadying the ship under Alan Sheehan, I think they had 5 clean sheets under him towards the end of the season, and again Harry was a very big part of that. And to rack up, I think it was a total of 14 clean sheets overall for the season. Defensively, Swansea at times really did look very impressive, and Harry was key to that. It's not just the sort of defensive element though that he offers. I sort of think he's, it's clear that he's a very big presence in both boxes really. I think he had 8 goal contributions last season, so big threat from the set piece, and I remember when he first joined, I spoke to someone at MK Dons, his previous club, and they were saying that one of the concerns was that did he have the physicality to match up with the Championship, because I don't think, because he was brought in really as a sort of ball playing centre back, that the sort of centre back that Russell Martin likes to employ, and but there were perhaps a few little concerns over whether he could perhaps handle the physicality of some of the bigger target men in the Championship. But he's grown into that challenge really well, and defensively very solid in terms of those aerial and duels on the ground as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I was going to ask you, because it's clear what has been clear, I think, over the last few weeks. I'm sure you've sensed it as well at your end and at the Swansea end, is that there's been a huge amount of interest in him, both from the Championship and Rangers, obviously with the Russell Martin connection, someone we know well here in Norfolk as well, likes him a lot. So has the feeling been, and I've seen a few maybe Swansea fans say this, that around January and the fact that he's entered the last 6 months of his contract, did it feel a little bit inevitable that he would move on this summer? I know again that I think Swansea have spoken about the fact they've made him a couple of offers to stay.
It's been a bit of a roller coaster, to be honest, because I mean this has been the whole saga around Harry Darling's contract has rumbled on for what feels like the best part of a year, really. I mean, it's I think we were first talking about it, funnily enough, during that impressive defensive run that I mentioned earlier, and I think that really highlighted the fact that Swansea were this was a problem that was going to come down the line, and Harry's impressive performances only further underlined that. I think I would say up until probably as recently as a month or 2 ago, there was still quite a lot of hope that Harry could be persuaded to stay. I think the issue, I think, was always going to be whether Swansea were going to match the valuation that Harry felt he was deserving of. But under Director of Football Richard Montague, the structure is a lot more well defined than I think perhaps it has been before. And Swansea, I was a little bit surprised when they did offer that new and improved deal a couple of months ago, shortly after Alan Sheehan was appointed, I think it was. But I think it became quite clear that that was going to be the offer, and it was kind of take it or leave it, really. But even then, I think there was still, certainly speaking to people at the club and the comments that were made by Montague over the last few weeks, there was still clearly some genuine hope that Harry could be persuaded to stay. But I think the longer the situation went on, the less confident people became. And I think in the last couple of weeks, there's definitely been an air of resignation around Harry. And then with the news of Cameron Burgess joining, I think that was widely seen as Harry's replacement. And that news, I guess, kind of ushered in a kind of acceptance that Harry was going to be on his way.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I mean, you've spoken, as so many people do, around Harry Darling about his ball playing qualities, and I think when you hear that about a defender, you think, or you question, and maybe the next question is, that's all very well and good, but can they actually defend? So that's I'm going to be kind of the question I can put to you, because certainly looking at his numbers, it feels like he's been pretty well rounded at Swansea.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, he's a dominant presence in the air. He's very strong in the tackle. Reads games quite well. You would look at him and you wouldn't say there's any kind of sort of glaring, obvious weakness to his game. I think the only thing I would say about Harry in terms of that point would probably be that whilst he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, when he does make them, they tend to be quite serious clangers. I mean, the ones that kind of stand out, there was, he was at fault for the goal against Sheffield Wednesday that condemned them to defeat towards the end of the season. The one that really stands out was the own goal against Charlton a couple of years ago. I don't know if you've seen that, but clearly misreads it and basically passes the ball into his own net. But those are they're not very common occurrences, but I think there is sometimes a concern that perhaps he does have a tendency to switch off sometimes. But I wouldn't say that is a massive concern in terms of his overall game, because I think he offers so much more than what I've just outlined there. I think it's he doesn't seem to have that sort of obvious glaring weakness, but I think that occasional tendency to make mistakes might well be one of them.
Yeah, and I mean, you touched upon it. One thing that has been really impressive, and to be fair, it's been throughout his career at MK Dons and in Cambridge also, is that goal return, that, as you say, that dominance in the attacking box as well. Have they all been kind of set piece goals? I've seen one video of a very, very good long range one against Rotherham. I can't remember if he was at Swansea or MK Dons for that. I think it might have been Swansea from the way you're nodding. So it feels like that goal threat, which is quite rare for a defender. I think he had the best return of a centre back in the Championship last season.
I would say most of the joy that we've seen from Harry in the final third has come from set pieces. I think he's a really, really big threat from set pieces. But as we have seen, he does have a decent shot on him. But I'm not sure we really saw that enough at Swansea. I don't know if maybe he was encouraged to sort of put a lid on that a little bit. But I think, one of the things that he does offer as well from an attacking point of view is that brilliant ability to sort of pick out a pass to turn defence into attack in the sort of blink of an eye. It's a really kind of he does very often, I would say, sort of almost drift and sort of sit into the bottom of a midfield, perhaps in sometimes even as a sort of makeshift double pivot at times. So, he's very, very keen to sort of help attacking moves get started. He's not afraid to go forward when he gets the opportunity to. But like I said, I think his most productive outlet in terms of attacking threat has always been the set pieces, really.
Yeah, and just final two, but we always talk about kind of the on-pitch elements. What about the off-pitch elements with him? Was there sort of I was listening to Mark Fotheringham, who obviously just recently been at Swansea, was doing something with our Radio Norfolk colleague, and he spoke about his leadership qualities and the fact he's got a little bit of an edge. Was that kind of obvious on the pitch as well and within the group?
Yeah, I think so. He certainly. I wouldn't say he was a sort of standout leader, but I don't know if that's because he was playing alongside Ben Cabango, who's kind of been, the well, I mean, he has been the captain since Matt Grimes left, and is very much a big leader of that team anyway. I don't think he's the sort of player who necessarily shouts and screams all the time. So I mean, we have seen some incidents that perhaps dispute that. Certainly, notably in the derby, there's been a couple of fiery occasions. He does like to perhaps wind up opponents a little bit sometimes, which I'm sure, which is one of those things where if he's on your team, you kind of love, but if you're playing against it, it's absolutely horrible. But on the whole, I would say he's the classic sort of lead by example type of player. Doesn't really caught the limelight an awful lot. I think I've only ever actually heard from him once in his whole 3 years here. He doesn't do an awful lot of sort of doesn't do an awful lot in terms of media duties and things like that. But I think he's very much a player who almost kind of prefers to do is talking out on the pitch, really. Yeah, he's definitely someone I think fans will probably take to in that regard.
And final one, which is kind of two rolled into one. But the first question, were you a little bit surprised it was Norwich, given some of the calibre of clubs that were mentioned? I know Sheffield United obviously had been linked, Rangers we've spoken about. And second, how do you think he's going to get on at Norwich as well? Clearly reuniting with someone that he knows in Liam Manning would have been a very big thing for him.
I wasn't massively surprised, no, because I think the Liam Manning factor was a huge part of the move. It was my understanding as well that there might be, because obviously he's from Cambridge, and I think there was perhaps a sense that maybe he'd like to sort of be closer to home, as it were. And I think Norwich ticked another box in that respect. So no, I wasn't massively surprised. I think it's difficult because I'm not entirely sure exactly how strong the interest was from elsewhere, because you would think the likes of Birmingham and Wrexham, I know they've only just come up from League One, but financially you would think, I mean, certainly Swansea, they could probably blow out of the water in terms of what they can offer financially. So I don't think if those two were serious about getting Harry on board, I'm not necessarily sure this move is really motivated purely by finances. I think there's a lot more to it than that. I think he just feels that the chance to work with Liam again has been a really, really big appeal to him. And I think I was listening to read his interview with the club after signing, and clearly the Premier League is a very big ambition of his, and it seems that he feels that Norwich is the best place to go on and achieve that ambition.
Sorry, I did say last one, but this definitely is the last one, because I've just remembered something from your reporting that I wanted to ask you about. There's a good line in there about Luca Modric. Is that right? Having a conversation with him from what you understand. I mean, that's now a major pull for Swans, isn't it? The fact that you've got someone, well, maybe it isn't in the case that it didn't have the desired effect, but the fact that someone who, like him picking up the phone, you've got to think that's only a good thing for Swansea moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the impact that Luca Modric's involvement has had on Swansea already has been really, really positive. So I mean, it's not just been with Harry. I think it's my understanding Luca's spoken to several other potential new recruits. I think Zidane Anusa, who's joined from Sweden, he actually said shortly after he signed that a conversation with Luca Modric was one of the things that helped persuade him to join. So I think it's, when you have a name like that on board, it's a huge pull. And I think it's obviously a shame that it hasn't resulted in Harry staying. But the flip side of that is, if you're looking for someone to replace Harry, like say Cameron Burgess. Now I don't know if Luca spoke to Cameron Burgess. I think I'm not saying it's necessarily him, but if you're looking for a replacement or other options to help give you a bit more depth in that area, having a Luca Modric on board to potentially pick up the phone and pitch the club, sell the club to new recruits is something really, 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 really good for the club in terms of attracting new players on board. But it's not just about players, is it? There's investment as well. I think having that big name involved with the club perhaps makes them more attractive for sponsorship opportunities and indeed other investors to maybe get involved. So yeah, it's been a really there's been a lot of excitement about it, as I'm sure you can imagine. But where it can take Swansea, we'll have to wait and see. I don't expect Luca Modric to be pulling on a Swansea City shirt anytime soon, but it certainly signals what many people feel is an exciting chapter, because I think the previous ownership, there was a lot of straining, shall we say, in terms of how that relationship went between the ownership and the fans, and the hierarchy and the fans, particularly when it comes to the transfer window. And I mean, Swansea have already brought 4 players on board, and it's not even the end of June, and that is quite frankly unheard of for Swansea City. They've had so many chaotic transfer windows, and to be honest, I think had Harry left within those previous transfer windows, I think that this probably would have stung a bit more. But I think there is a lot more faith now in this regime to not only replace Harry, but maybe even potentially upgrade Harry and indeed other areas of the pitch. So yeah, it's quiet excitement is how I would put it at the moment for Swansea at the moment. A lot of positivity.
Good man, Tom. Thank you very much for your time and your insight on Harry Darling. Of course, you can check out all of Tom's work at Wales Online and go over to his social channels, which we'll link down below, and you can check out all of his coverage on Swansea. And of course, we'll see him a couple of times across the Championship season as the year goes on as well. Thank you very much for watching and for joining us, and we'll see you again, I'm sure, plenty of times over what's going to be a busy summer for Norwich City.